Today I'm going to be showing you how to achieve this incredible alternate Necron scheme, loads of verdigris and weathering in no time at all, in just a few steps. Alright, so we are up at the crack of dawn to do an intro because it is so horribly sweaty in the UK. The vest has come out again. We've got this very effective alternate minty Necron paint scheme. I keep calling it minty, I started it jokingly, it's kind of stuck now. He's got a lot of verdigris on him, so he's very weathered, he's scratched, he looks like he's been through the wars, but not necessarily in a rusty way. We use exactly the same technique for our rusting in our previous videos, but we've just used a cool set of colours instead of a warm set of colours. So this guy really pops out, and one of the reasons is 100% of the model is cool. The base, the armour, the weathering, the scratches, nothing is warm apart from his eyes and the kind of filament or whatever it is on his weapon. So the nice thing about that is it means that a very simple paint scheme can pop out, and you can draw attention to the bits you want to draw attention to just by merit of them being so different from what is around them and next to them. It looks really, really good. I quite like it. This is it's very close to the way that I would be painting an army if I was doing an army myself, and none of the steps are particularly complicated. I take you through how to control your brush a little for highlighting, which I think is a really good set of tips. Whether you're beginner or intermediate, it doesn't really matter, they're all useful. This scheme is really solid because every single step is kind of measured out and there's nothing there that doesn't need to be there, so over an army it would be extremely fast. Please give the video a like if you like it, please subscribe, hit that bell notification so you can see our future content, and if you have any suggestions for future content, please just pop them below. We do read each and every one and they really help inform us as to what's coming up next. The next video is probably going to be a salamander by the look of things. If you don't want it to be a salamander and you want it to be a dark angel, pop over to our community tab and vote in the poll, and you can affect what comes up soon.
Okay, so before we begin, we have our dude. I would be using the Runelord Brass spray paint from an aerosol if you've got access to it. If not, you can brush paint or airbrush this base coat, and that will just save you time getting a nice shiny base coat, which is really important to kind of help the following stages. Even the wash that we're going to be doing, it works better if you have a smoother base coat. So do whatever you need to do to get a nice smooth base coat, and then we can rock on. So our first step is to mix up a custom wash. I'm going to be using a little bit of water. And then the primary ingredient is Huldra Blue from Scale 75 Fancy and Games color. This is a crazy deep blue, gorgeous paint, as you can see, and it's kind of a staple within a lot of my painting and tutorials. Just if you want kind of like a beautiful deep sea rich color, it's really, really helpful. I'm going to take a couple of blocks of blue tone from Army Painter. This could be any blue ink, any blue wash, a couple of drops of ink or a few more drops of wash. And then the final ingredient, and this is quite an important one, any thinner. So this is Tamiya's thinner that I use for airbrushing. 2 drops of that in there. You can see it's already messed with the surface tension, and that's the reason this is in there. It will make everything thinner, as thinner does, reduce the surface tension and make it wash more readily over your model. So that is that. If you want, you could put a couple of drops of glaze medium in to thin it down, and what that would have the effect of is making the wash lighter on the raised areas and darker in the recesses. I'll put a drop in there just to show you exactly what that would do to it. It'll make your mix look more milky, but the final model won't feature any of that. We've got our wash, we've got our beautiful size 4, and now it's just a matter of slapping it on the model. So you could of course be doing this over a silver base coat. It's entirely up to you which way you wanted to go with it. I'm going for a slightly weird colour though, and it's quite important for me to have something just a tiny bit bronzy underneath. Is going to allow us to be a bit like, you'll end up with just a really cool crisp blue if you do this over a silver, which is fine, but that's not what I'm going. Now for our next step, you can actually approach this in a couple of ways. I've got Thrash Metal from Scale Color, and you have the option to dry brush it, which you can do like this, just as we do on all of our tutorials, kind of top down, focusing on raised areas, that type of thing, you can do that. Now what that will do is it will do a really good job of hitting the raised volumes, but also specifically picking out edges and stuff like that really efficiently. So you can do this all over the model, or got a size 4 here, just been dipped in water. Make sure it's not too wet, but you want it to be fairly wet. Take a little bit of thrash metal, and then you can selectively highlight specific areas. Up to you, either is fine, and as ever, kind of a middle ground with techniques is one of the best ways to do things. Now what I'm doing with this, because there's so much water on the brush, it's been slightly diluted, and I'm starting my strokes away from the area I want to be the brightest, and I'm bringing them towards the area that I'd like to end up the brightest. I'm ending at that. So if I want the top of this rounded section to be bright, I'll start about halfway up, and then I'll finish my stroke at the top. And your lift off point, so the point at which your stroke ends, that's where you leave the most paint, and that's where you'll leave things the most shiny. So either of these ways is absolutely fine. If you are doing the brush method, then a really nice trick is to hold up your miniature to the light, and you can note the areas where it is getting particularly reflecty. So that's not a word. So top of this eye, top of his head, dome at the back of it, top of this cylinder, maybe kind of like this bit here. And one of the joys of metallics is if you hold them up to a lamp, they will tell you how to highlight themselves. So you can scoot over with a brush doing it like that. If you are doing it with the dry brush, you can bear those in mind as well, but the dry brush is a little bit more general and less specific, so you could go over the entire model and it'll kind of just do all the work for you. Alright, so this step is Vallejo Game Air Silver. You can use whichever bright silver you want here. The idea is that you use something that is really going to stand out. So the reason for picking the Vallejo silvers here would be that they do a pretty good job of making things fairly nuts. And what I'm looking to do is just push into the raised areas, those areas that we hit with the dry brushing. I ended up using both techniques quite heavily, the dry brushing and the brush brushing, and I'm just going to concentrate on hitting in the center of all of the previous areas that I've hit, whether it was with the dry brushing or the brush brushing. You're just looking to kind of exaggerate the shine on the areas that would be catching the light, basically. The other thing you can do when you have something like this is, if you're going lower down and you want to add a little bit of age to your model, then by all means, you can give him some battle damage. This guy could have been through the wars. He's suitably dressed. So yeah, just a few scratches all over the model is a really nice way to kind of pump on the age. And then when you get to the sections like this, you're ready with the side of your brush for a nice quick edge highlight. Nothing too fancy, but maybe just hitting the upwards facing edges. Or again, it's I keep repeating myself, but it's just the areas that would be catching the light. Now, you will know from previous videos, if you're a repeat viewer, that one of my favorite ways to make dark washes is to just take my previous wash and mix a bad and black in with it. So that's what we're doing here. Now, bad and black isn't as black as other blacks, so that makes it perfect for this purpose. And what I'm going to be doing is just going around in any particularly deep recesses. Obviously don't completely oversaturate your brush like I have there. Any completely kind of like deep or underhanging recesses, I'm just using this as an excuse to push the contrast. I'll catch any of the pitting on the model, I'll dot that. Okay, so we've got Boreal Tree Green from scale 75 here. We're going to be doing a verdigris wash. Now you could use Nihilic Oxide or something like that if you wanted to, but I'm going to kind of keep things coherent with the colours we've used so far, and again going on my principle of just using what we've already got and mixing it into our previous wash, and that's going to be used just in the very recesses. And putting this down first will allow us to transition into the green, the kind of the more vibrant green colours that we've got coming, which is going to start transitioning to Gauzebuster with a little bit more ease. Again, same strats, just picking the recesses and pushing towards them. Again, so keeping it simple, Gauzebuster green, just get a big dollop of that, mix it in with your previous layer, or wash your previous layer as far as the model's concerned. Make sure you dilute it with some water. And then we're going to be dotting that in the previous stages that we've just painted in. Wait for them to dry first, unlike me. And kind of like the pitting, recesses around joints, anywhere where you'd like to add a little bit more contrast. And you can, of course, if you want to have it so it's kind of running down and has streaked from an area, you can suggest that too. Okay, so no time for screwing about. Grab a bit more. Now this is pretty much entirely gauze blaster green at this stage. We've only got a little bit of our previous mix in there. Again, make sure it stays watered down. You don't want too much excess. This should jump out quite a bit in comparison to our previous stages. There we go. So you don't have to cover every area that we hit with a previous stage, but the rule that you should follow is you shouldn't be hitting anywhere new with this step. So only going within previous stages and concentrating on the recesses, that type of stuff. The chest plate, which is very easy to miss, just pay some special attention there. And again, if you do want to do some streaking or runs, obviously you have to have built up a foundation for them in your previous stages, but you can absolutely do them. All right, so we've cheated a bit here. We've added in fluorescent green from Vallejo and a little bit of white scar as well. Doesn't matter what white you use, but fluorescent paint is really going to allow us to kind of turbo up the level of contrast. You do not want to hit any new territory with this, as I've said with previous steps. It's really important that you go within previously used areas, and because this is so contrasted in comparison to our previous one, this is going to allow us to add some nuance within our verdigris areas. So not only do we have this lovely contrast going on, but it's not the same everywhere. So some areas we won't be hitting with this mix, and some areas half of it will hit with this mix, and that'll just put in some variation. We are looking for a kind of an organic effect here. We want this guy to look, well, by the end of it, he's going to look like he's been under the ocean for 500 years, which is a bit weird, but it is a pretty powerful and kind of a cohesive effect for a cool, scary, weird model. So final step, great big blob of white scar. The rules haven't changed. We're still making sure to water it down. We're still making sure not to hit any new territory with this. And we're still making sure not to go in with a brush that is kind of massively oversaturated. Do give your brushes a good wash after doing something like this. As you can see, I've got paint collecting in the ferrule because I've been mixing up washes and soaking it. So give it some TLC afterwards, just to ensure that their life expectancy remains as good as it should be. And then this stage, all over, just hit those areas you hit last time with the Turbo Minty version, and we should have a pretty gorgeous final result. Alright, so as I've said with all the models from Indomitus, we've gone for a pretty left-right scheme. You can either go cool and cohesive with this guy, so this is our cool alienscape base, or you can go like brighter and higher contrasting. So here is our more like warm Marsy scheme. I'm not sure which one of these I prefer. I do like the contrast of this, and I think this kind of, you've got some coherency with the base and the glowing sections here too. So probably this one for contrast is where I'd go, but I think both of them work equally well.
Okay, so he is done. I love this scheme. I think it's really effective. You could mix this up in terms of the basing. Obviously, cool, warm, I've been going on about it a lot recently. You can pick for cohesion or you can pick for contrast. Either of them is absolutely fine, and basically it'll just make him look like he is tied in and fits with the environment, so he's at home, or he could be invading and on like a different planet. If you do want to tie him in with the warm basing or the cool basing, then you can take the basing material or the wash or the dry brush slightly up to like ankle level, and then, you know, it looks like he's been in his environment for a fair bit. So I'm really pleased with the effect of this model in general. I think it's quite striking, it's quite different. If you've got any questions on how I've achieved it or anything like that, please let me know. And of course, the base that the model is on from our Grimdark basing foundation video is available. We'll link that below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and do pop all of your comments and suggestions and questions down below. We read each and every one and we'll get back to them as soon as possible.